Ladies and gentlemen, dogs and cats, bitsy mosquitoes, and bald-headed rats, I have a story to tell that has never been heard before. So pull up a seat and sit on the floor.
Let's go.
One bright day, in the middle of the night, two dead boys got into fight. Back to back, they faced each other, drew their swords, and shot each other. Two deaf policemen heard the noise and came to kill the two dead boys. And if you do not believe that my lie is true, just ask the blind man. He saw it all too.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another episode of the Foundry Lab, where ideas become power and power becomes the engine for African transformation. So today's episode is a bit different. It's not just about breaking down news or throwing ideas at the wall. It's a conversation with a good friend of mine. I'd like to believe you're Francois.
Oh, and in many ways, Lulama.
Yeah, so it's a conversation with a good friend of mine someone who at a young age has already traveled and worked across borders and in places like Mali and Rwanda, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd like to believe that you see Africa not just as a home, but as a living and a breathing project, because this place is still underdeveloped.
In many ways, of course, yeah.
So, just to get us started, so if someone was to write the opening chapters of your life, what key moments, pulses, and just the places would they have to include in them?
That's a great question. Well, I think what I have to first give credit to is my creator, my sustainer, my Lord. Without him, I would never be able to have had the opportunities that I had and the people that I would have met. Yeah. And those two things combined, I would say, are the two primary factors that were able to help me just get a good head start between teachers, mentors, bosses, my parents, my pastors. Yeah. Everybody has played a small role in developing who I am today, but ultimately it's the grace of God that brought me where I am now. But if I were to say what were the key moments that brought me into the life that I had now, to be honest, I would say these moments are not necessarily ones that are long planned or well prepared. When I was in high school, when I was looking towards the future, I thought I had only two career options, either a pastor or a lawyer. And both of those are nowhere near close to what I ended up doing today. I made the decision when I was immediately out of high school not to go directly to a full-time degree in university, but to go to Bible college for a year. And what that was able to do is give me a way to stand on my own two feet, be able to study, learn, manage my own responsibility in my own time, and do it in a place where I couldn't depend on my parents or any help or any assistance. That helped massively. And what made it better, unfortunately, was COVID-19. Yeah. I had to then completely change my routine after 3 months, go back home, and still continue producing what I needed to produce. Yeah. And that was great. And then after that 1 year, COVID-19 was hard for all of us, but after that 1 year in particular, I then finished my first year of Bible college and decided I have no idea what I want to do. Everybody is faced with this question in their life. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? A terrifying question that we all get, and we always have some answer prepared, but the confidence that we have in that answer is most of the time quite limited. Yeah. So I ended up saying, well, why don't I just go find something that I can do, that I'm interested in, and go talk to the people I know who are looking for things. Yeah. So I reached out to a few people who were looking for younger people just to come and help them with whatever they're doing. And that ended up in me going to work as a teaching intern for 6 months. I was placed in a school where I had to teach grade 6s, 7s, 5s, 4s, you name it, a lot. I was responsible for taking care of classrooms, doing Bible stories because of my Bible college background, and just using whatever I had wanted to teach the kids and making lessons from it and learning. Yeah. I did that for 6 months. It was an amazing experience to learn interpersonal skills. Being able to work with children and be able to manage large groups of people was quite helpful. However, I felt it very difficult and unsatisfying work because I'm a man who likes to take something and make something very, very valuable with his time. Yeah. And as valuable as it may be to work with younger people, I wasn't being able to utilize everything that I thought I could to really move lots of Africans forward or grow in the best ways that I could. So after which, another opportunity arose. A friend of mine said, we're doing a business internship. Yeah. Would you like to apply? I took a look at it. I applied for it. After I had an interview there, one of the CEO came back to me and he said, okay, thanks for applying. Thanks for being honest and critical in the interview. Let's go and let's give you another interview. Then I met another gentleman who is the managing director of that company. He grilled me like you will not believe. I felt like Boerewors on Heritage Day during that interview. But it was one of the most incredible experiences to learn how to just stand on your own, even when your skin is on fire. And I left that interview, drove home, went to a class that night because I like doing jiu-jitsu in my free time. I went to do jiu-jitsu class, and right before that, I got a call from that CEO saying, "Can you come on board full time?" No degree, no previous experience, just would you like to come aboard full time?
Yeah.
And that wasn't because I was friends with the company or whatnot. It was because they saw something that everybody wanted.
Yeah.
When you go for jobs, it's not about necessarily what papers you have, but proving that you can do what you say you can. If you're honest about your skills, and if you're intentional about developing them and improving them and continue to learn and grow, that is one of the most valuable skill sets that any employer looks for whenever you're looking to go out and start something new.
Yeah.
And that's a skill not only employers love, but if you're a founder, if you're starting something new, that's fantastic. Sorry for that tangent, but long story short, got into this company, started working there on the desk. They then moved me to go to Mali to go be trained there on a site. I worked in the supply chain division for about 6 months, learning a little bit of not necessarily mechanical engineering, but how machines work, how organizations work, how you can manage a project, manage a power plant site. Lots of small little nuances and small little tips on how to manage people and processes and things that are then combined into being able to move into a management space. A few months after that, I came back. Decided I love this work, I love this industry, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I've had to then decided to take a bit of a risky step and go to study a degree, to which now I landed up at Stadia, which is where I met this gentleman, and I'm now about a couple of months of finishing my degree in project management. So in a nutshell, I would say that the opening chapters of my life were defined by the people I met and by my willingness to be able to just say, no matter how difficult it is, I want to be able to learn what I love and contribute what I love to anybody who's willing to take it. Regardless of industry, regardless of race, regardless of color, I want to be able to use what I've been given and use it to the best of my ability, and finding the people to make that a reality is what shaped who I am today.
Just to contextualize, I know you mentioned Mali, and so where the Bible school, where did that happen?
Oh, that was in Cape Town. That had nothing to do with Mali or this industry. Like I said, I totally didn't. I had no idea my life was going to turn out this way.
So you do the Bible school,
yes,
and at that time you don't have any degree, and you're getting these opportunities.
Yes.
So at what point do you decide I need to actually go back to school? What are some of the missing skills that you have? Obviously, there was something missing.
Interesting
that you decided to let me go.
Interesting question. I would say the easiest answer would be, and I think the answer that should be most universally applied is, I didn't have a very good tenacity when it came to work. And I thought the main thing a degree helps with is, can you persevere for 3 years at one thing, consistently showing up when you need to, consistently handing in good work when you need to, as well as being able to develop an excellent skill set and self-discipline of learning. Because the difference between university and school, you're basically spoon-fed everything. Your teachers will basically pass your exams for you if you play it right. And your parents will do the same too. If you've got parents who are just saying, you have to get good marks, and will sit down and write your essays for you, that can be a problem. But in university, you don't have that luxury at all. But if you can learn to say, I need to learn something, I need to make something my own, and I need to sit with context, with material, and make sure that I can make it my own and use it. That's what the benefit for university was. And I was struggling to do that in this particular industry. Even though I had exposure to tertiary education, tertiary thinking before, I didn't have it in this particular context, because project management is highly technical. With a lot of people management interwoven in it, but if you don't understand the technicalities behind it, it's impossible to manage. There's a very good big saying that my father taught me, who's been a manager at one of the biggest government companies for years, like 28 years now. He's told me that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. If you do not know how something works, it's impossible for you to manage it correctly. Then you'll always be depending on other people to figure out. how this thing works.
Right. So how this all came about, this conversation, is I posted a WhatsApp story, a WhatsApp status, and it was about the unification of Africa. And you commented on that about how much, as much as it's a dream, but it's also a governance headache.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Governance headache is in you need to get people working together who for centuries have been enemies, for centuries have not spoken the same language, and for centuries have only ever cared about whatever goes on in their own borders. So we understand resource sharing and resource collaboration between these countries is extremely, extremely difficult to do. If you think business in general is difficult to do because by working with governments, imagine trying to get governments to work with each other. That the scale of this mission, this project, if you want to call it, Project Africa, if you want to call it that, is probably one of the furthest reaching dreams that we have today. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I'm just trying to think in reality, especially when you have characters like the guys who've taken over Burkina Faso now. Who's
Ibrahim Traore.
That Ibrahim Traore. I think what he's done is very interesting. And he resembles a lot of the sentiment of what goes on in West African countries, especially countries that were colonized by the French, the Belgians, those guys that were just totally ransacked by their colonial powers. Those guys have got a lot of animosity towards the West, towards Western ideology of collaboration as well. And while you could argue you've got Ubuntu to come into that picture, but this is also North Africa as well. So these guys may really, really struggle to get along with each other. They can't even get along with themselves. The civil wars that you have going on, the further north in Africa you go, makes it really, really hard for these people to just sit down in a room and trust each other. Because unfortunately, so that's why I said it's a bit of a governance headache, because you're dealing with some some people who've got a lot of animosity towards collaboration and a lot of animosity towards the people who have actually been, I don't want to seem a little bit like, maybe it seemed a little bit cross, but have been propping up the country in certain ways. Like the mining companies, although they may not have been, and this always have been very treated their people very well. A lot of, if you didn't have the mining companies there, you wouldn't have people who know how to get the resources out of the ground to spur the economy on. This is a particular problem in my experience with Mali, with Mali, the Malian government per se. It's got some of the most amazing mineral wealth. And in fact, one of the biggest gold mines in the world, Eric, draws about 15 to 25% of their gold from that one country. And not just that one country, from one mine, from one small area, which is where I was able to go and work, called Lulama. And that mine now has been taken over hostilely by the Malian government. And now, how are you going to get the team and the resources, and this is where governance comes into play, the right people to be able to take that on and lead it? It's possible. It's very possible to have the right people to take it and lead it now. The question is, who's going to do that? If it's not the West, and if it's not like Canadian companies like Barrick and other countries who have got the skill sets needed to bring the minerals out the ground, then you need to take the locals and train them to be able to do that. But then who does that? Who does that? Who is able to do that? You're going to need to contract the West again. You're going to need to bring them back to say, listen, we need you to train our guys. We need this. We need that. We need you to just help us with this transition. And the way Mali's done right now, it's just done. Immediate takeover, you guys are out, you guys are gone, we don't like you, get out of here. And so you've got hostile governments like that who are willing to, on the spur of the moment, kick out their biggest producer and then just decide, no, we're going to run everything ourselves without any foresight into the future, thinking how you're going to feasibly transition this thing. So that's why I say it's a bit of a governance headache, because I want to say that to a degree it has to start at the top in some sense. There has to be some willingness for governments to work together in one sense, but you could also argue the other sense. It can be a bottom-up thing, but bottom-up thing is even more difficult to get, because now you've got to convince millions of individuals who have got hundreds of cultural differences, diversity differences
as well.
Tribalism, exactly. That tribalism element, you got to convince them to say, hey, you guys, you need to come together towards a common goal. Put your things aside, your injustices aside, and all that stuff aside that you're claiming to, you're fighting for, to say, this is what gives us our identity, and put that aside for a new identity. That's where it gets really difficult. Convincing people for a new African identity is probably one of the hardest things that we as young Africans can do.
You make really good points there. And for me, I never thought about it from that perspective as being a governance headache, because I've listened to a lot of speeches from Pan-Africanists, and I would like to believe the whole idea of Pan-Africanism and uniting Africa, it originated from, was it, I think, Kwame Nkrumah, and then there was Muammar Gaddafi as well, also advocating for Pan-Africanism and unifying Africa. But now I never thought about it from a point of the governance side of things. And then I started really looking into it. And then I was like, okay, if we were to really achieve it, where would the capital even be? Because you also have to think of it from a military point of view. You know, the capital can't just be in a place where it's not secure. It sort of like has to be at the center of Africa. So you think probably, I don't know, Kenya, Rwanda, around about there, you know. So it's just a lot of those variables that we'd have to consider. And it's a lot for us to think about. And I pray that we get to that point, because now the whole idea behind trying to unify Africa is from a point of understanding that we need to build a continent that is sovereign. You know, the only way that America is as successful is because they managed to unify, you know, and just come together. And that way, there's a lot more capacity for developing and prospering, you know, and being a superpower that America is. So I do strongly believe that it can be done, but yeah, we need our intellectuals to sit down and also just from a grassroots level, you know, and just bring the people together. And again, you mentioned it would be an entire new identity that would have to be formed.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. So interesting. You mentioned America. I think this is an interesting point of conversation to go on. Because one of the things that I think made America, like you say, the unification of the states is one of the things that was able to bring it together very well. But why they unified? It was over a common enemy. It was over the British. It was over their rule. It was over their the way they were ruling was not in line with how the Americans believed that ruling should be done, and not in line with their constitutions and their agreements with their founding country, with the UK. And that's what sparked the American Revolution. It was this idea that we are free, sovereign individuals. We are able to make our own choices, our own decisions. And under this freedom, we have decided we are no longer going to affiliate with you, the UK, because we don't feel like you're ruling us properly, and maybe we declare independence. But with that independence, they didn't only just say we're going to be free and be done with it. They gave conditions to how that independence had to work, and part of that independence meant that the individual states could not be independent from each other. They put rules in place from the beginning of the founding of the country to say you cannot merge away from each other, because we are sister colonies. We are one country, different states, different governing bodies, which is exactly what Africa is. Different governing bodies, different cultures to a degree, but we all have one common identity, and that identity was founded in their founding document, the Constitution. And anything that they did, any laws that they made, anything that they made going forward from that, needed to come from that. But I think that was incentivized not necessarily by, we got great opportunity to pull together. It was incentivized by, we hate being ruled this way. We hate living this way. We need a new identity, and we need to formulate that new identity and move it forward. And it was helpful for them because they were 13 colonies that came together at first. Now we've got in Africa 52, like you said, 52 sovereign nations who have 54. Excuse me. Thank you very much for correction. 54 sovereign nations who are now have had their own governance for maybe, depending, some was less than others, but they've all had their own sovereignty, and they've formulated their own identities. So I think I love the idea of a Pan-African thing. It'd be awesome. But I think that there's two dangers we need to be careful of. The first danger is that we don't lose the individuality of every state, every nation, because Africa is one of the most beautifully diverse continents on the planet. You got some.
That's what makes us African. That's what makes Africa so beautiful.
Why do you think the rest of the world loves Africa? You know how many? I've got a lot of friends who are Germans. Now, if you think Germany, you think lots of money, lots of prestige, a lot of really high individuality, and
Is it really though what you think about? Because I think about
You think about that? Oh no, they are guilt-ridden about that.
Yeah.
They're guilt-ridden. You mention that in Germany, they'll hate you. They'll hate you just like if you just mention the word Hitler.
Yeah.
They just say no, it's too culturally sensitive. Don't talk about it. They don't even touch it. I think it's made them a little bit culturally too sensitive, but that's a different topic. But they come and they say they love Africa. They love the diversity. They love the culture. They love everything. They love what we have because we're so vibrant. Probably the most vibrant continent on the planet in terms of diversity, which is amazing to see. But now, as you said, the trick coming back to Pan-Africanism is that you need to now dial back that diversity in order for you to make room for unity. Because unfortunately for us, the reality is diversity and unity are two very different things. You cannot be different from each other and the same totally. You cannot be 100% different and 100% the same at the same time. You would need to then say, where are we similar as Africans? What binds us together? What makes us important? And then honing on those areas and base your unity on that. But then also move room for, that's where we're individuals. That's where we're different. And if we make a constitution, like you said, if we make an African constitution that says we are going to be one sovereign superpower, it needs to be based on that unity, those things that we agree, we are similar in, and those things need to be uncompromising. You cannot then put the clauses to say, if we don't like it, we're out. You can't put that in there. You have to say, if you're in forever. You cannot just pull out if you want to, because it will mess up your government. But then you also need to leave room for where we separate, where we different. How are Zulus, Tswanas, Xhosas, how are you all different? And how is Malians with Bambara and French different from Rwandans with French and their own native language? I forget the name. That's what you need, I think. That university and diversity mix, that balance.
I realize now I might have made a mistake. When you mentioned 52 states, or you're mentioning America?
No, I was mentioning Africa.
Africa,
It's only 50 states. It's only 50 states in America.
It is 54.
Thank you.
So now, do you think African unity is possible in our lifetime?
In our lifetime? Tough question. If it were to be possible, wow, you're really putting me on the spot. This is an amazing question to think about. But what I encourage your listeners to think about, I think it needs to, if we are going to do it in our lifetime, the only way any change starts is with the hardest place that any change can ever start, and is with the individual. If you as an individual are unwilling to put aside or solve differences about your culture, about your background, etc., that prevent you from being one in unity with someone else or somebody who's across the table from you. If I were to sit across the table from a Zulu man, etc., and he's uncompromising in his cultural values and I'm uncompromising on mine, we don't have unity. It just doesn't work. You can't do that. So I would argue it starts with you should start with the individual and then have individuals think, okay, how do we form a common identity around that? But in our lifetime, let's say 40 years, maybe? Let's argue professional lifetime, 40 years, I want to be optimistic and say, yes, it can be, but it's going to require more than what we're giving now. And it's going to require young people to, if you don't mind me being blunt, stop complaining about your life. Stop complaining about what's hard, because unfortunately life is hard. There's no escaping the difficulty of life. And if you're not willing to sit up with that or be comfortable with that, then there can't be any real change. People have been talking about change in ways for thousands of years. The only real people who do change are the people who first start with changing themselves and changing how they operate and how they think and how they move things forward. So, but I'm a Bible believing Christian. I partially believe that unity, just based off of human connectivity and human mutual agreements, I don't necessarily think is possible. I believe that in order for us as people to come together, we need to be first reconciled to our Savior, who then reconciles us to one another. So I think that human pride is extremely volatile and extremely difficult to work around. And if you want to really feasibly talk about bringing Africa together, I think Africa first needs to come to the Savior. And only then in the Savior can we have a reality where, like Galatians 3, which says there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female. Not that those distinctions melt away, but those distinctions don't prevent us from being unified with one another.
Yeah.
And that's where we find real unity, not in each other, because as you said, we're not the same. You're different than I am. He's different from what I am.
Yeah.
You need to find one common ground of eternal unity. And only from that point can you really start building something forward. So I gave you the secular answer, which is introspect yourselves.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately, if you're going to use that as your ultimatum, I don't see that as being a viable solution. The only viable solution I do see is that Africa needs to return to the Savior, and it needs to submit and repent of its sin, repent of its past, both white and black, because we've all done bad things. Can we just put that out there? We've all done bad things to each other. You slaughtered my people, I slaughtered your people. For hundreds of years, we were doing that to each other. But we need to be able to, through Christ, be forgiven first for our trespasses before we can then forgive one another. And only then can we find real unity to move forward. That would be the real feasible answer. I say it's the only way that we can make it work.
So out of everything that you just said now, two things really stand out for me. It's going to take a bit more effort from our side as young people, right? So, and you mentioned my audience. So typically the young person in South Africa is not really into politics like that. It's rare. You know, as soon as you start mentioning politics or these type of conversations, they switch off. You know, so how do we change that? Number two, it has been my prayer for the longest of time that God raises up God-fearing leaders in Africa. We need God-fearing presidents. I feel like a lot of God-fearing leaders, not just presidents, because if presidents, ministers, it trickles down.
Of course, right.
And so now, how do we really get to that point? You know, is it also leveling up as Christians, you know, going out there, what is it, Matthew 28:19, going out into the nations and preaching the gospel, and making sure that people are inspired by the word of God. You know, what's your take on that?
Well, let's just try to understand the first question was, you said, how do we get the youth involved in ruling and governance and interest? And the second thing is, how do we create that unity in Christ kind of thing?
For the longest of time, I've been preaching that message, and we touched on it as well, that we should stop complaining and actually start doing. You know, so we complain, we say all these things about the government is not giving me this, the government is not doing that. So what needs to be done for you to stop being so reliant on the government?
So, like, if your audience likes statistics, I'll give them one of those to start with. Africa is 70% youth. 70% of us live under the age of 30 years old. But
this is not new to my sorry to disturb you. This is not new to my audience.
Great.
I've said this before.
Great.
Countless times.
Great. So but we all agree on that. But you asked the question, if we are the biggest proportion of people who are the most capable workers, who are the most capable thinkers, and who are the most ambition-driven, because we've still got our whole life ahead of us, so we want to build in a particular way, it means that, in reality, you have more than what you give yourself credit for. And like we talked about technology and that kind of help. I know people will say this over and over and over and over again, to say you've got all the tools in the world to be able to build whatever you want, etc. Even though we say that more and more, it doesn't make it less true. I'd say the big thing then becomes discipline for the young people. If you say you want something, prove it. How do you show you really want something out of this life? Do you say, I want this? Somebody says no, and you complain? Because that doesn't make you a competent adult. It makes you a child. It means that mommy didn't buy me what I wanted, so now I'm going to sit and complain. Instead of saying, mommy didn't buy me what I wanted, I don't ask mommy why. Mommy, why didn't I get this? And then talk with mommy. See what compromise you can make and say, Mommy, if I do the dishes every day, can I buy that thing? Mommy, if I do this, can I buy that thing? Etc. Or Mommy might just say, no, it's not the right thing for now, but if you want something else, go get that instead. if young people are unwilling to ask questions about what do I want and what am I willing to do to get what I want, obviously within the realms of still honoring, still being ethical, still honoring your profession, still honoring those around you, then if you're not willing to commit to anything and really see anything through, I really think just question if that's what you really want, or question, am I really putting in enough effort to see it done? Unfortunately, that's it. That's it when it comes to productivity and work. When I left my job, I could have complained. I could have said, "Oh no, this isn't great. I miss the money that I was making." I could have said all of those things, but instead I said, "This is an opportunity for me to do something different, to expand my skill sets in something else, and then move forward." And I'm not saying I'm the perfect person to look to, but I'm saying that that part of your responsibility as a young person, one of your only responsibilities, is that to decide how I make use of my time. Your biggest asset is time. It's what the old people with billions in the bank crave the most but can never buy. It's what you have.
Absolutely.
If you are young and you think billionaires have it much better than you, billionaires don't have the time you have. They don't have the freedom you have. They don't have the newness of perspective and their technology availability and technology skill sets that you have. So if you're not willing to use any of that, then guess what? You're going to stay where you are, but you don't have a right to complain. You don't have the right to say government's not doing anything for me. But then again, ask a question: why do you want to depend on the government to give you everything? Government, in my opinion, I share a similar opinion to what what's his name now? Adam Smith had, one of the first economists. He said government should be small and it just needs to control rules and regulations and how people operate with each other.
Someone said it. Yeah. Not this inflated cabinet that we have right now.
Because exactly. That's what we have right now. Because the government takes care of everything.
Yeah.
That's actually a disaster. If the government takes care of everything, you're asking your grandmother to lift 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's never worked. You've tried it in communist countries. You've tried it in all over the world. The bigger the government normally gets, the less freedom you have to do something and the less productive you are, generally. Because if it just, anyway, but that's a different discussion for another day. But for the young people, I would say do that first. Figure out what you want. Or if you don't know what you want, just do something. Find something you can do and do it better than anybody else. If you can do it better than anybody else, you will stand out. 100%. And then once you stand out, get better at doing that thing. Find avenues that you can use to improve that. Because that's what makes you stand out more and stand out to other people. Because that's what the markets are run. The markets are not run by the government saying, you go there, you go there, you go there, you go there. Which is how we often think growing up. It's just that we get our degree, we go apply, and then we go out to the world and we say, okay, I'm here now, use me. That's not how life works. Life works on, somebody comes to you and says, hang on, you can do something cool. I need that. Can you come work with me? Somebody else comes to say, we need some help here. Can you help us here? Opportunities come like that. Opportunities don't come through submitting an application on LinkedIn. They come through the people that are behind the opportunities that need you to do something or are offering for you to do something. That's where opportunities arise. And those kind of things are not all formal. You can ask your friends, ask your family, ask people. Just ask the question, where can I be of use? Where can I be of service? And where can I do something?
Absolutely.
That's where it starts.
We've steered completely away from my prep, and it's okay because now at least my audience, I believe they got some value from that because that was very valuable. I got some chills just listening to that, So you've been in Mali, Rwanda.
Yes.
You mentioned recently Mozambique.
Yes.
What is happening? Like, I've never been in these countries. All I know about these countries is what I read about, what I see on the news, and that type of stuff. So, what do you see on the ground that is different from South Africa?
Well, I have to say, I could barely see a similarity. At first, I mean, like, other than the fact that you've got like chaotic roads, like that's a consistency I found everywhere in Africa is chaotic roads. The first thing that you see. The roads are crazy. The type of the drivers, the rules, etc. That's the one thing. But on the more grassroots level and the more value chain add level, I'd say is that what really is different about Mali and about other countries is that kind of similar to what I mentioned about the youth is that their youth are willing to break their backs just to survive.
Yeah.
That we as South Africans, I think, we're more privileged than we give ourselves credit for,
Yeah.
but we're blind to that privilege. Privilege is blind to those who have it. And I think if you could take one thing away, like I saw a lot in Africa, but the one thing I really took away that scared me, to one sense, is that how hard people have to work in Africa to get a tenth of what is available to us. Most of the guys I used to work with in Mali, I remember them doing superhuman feats, and they weren't supervisors, they weren't managers, they were just the guys who were supposed to dig the holes and put their backs into it and get something finished, get small things done. That would take them hours. And what was amazing, what we take days to do, they did in hours. And what they got paid in our rand equivalent currency, it would have been like a tenth of what a South African might get paid, but they did it in a tenth of the time. So you should have seen it. It's incredible to see that. And I think one big problem that we have as South African youth, I believe we are unfortunately deluded into thinking we are the greatest country in Africa and we will stay the greatest country in Africa. We are a great country now, yes, but we are also the most entitled African country.
Yeah, absolutely.
We think that we will stay great because we're South Africa. That because we've got a good economic system, we've got nice fancy roads, we've got Rolls Royce where the rest of Africa doesn't. We think because we've got that we're fine. That we can just cruise along our lives, not put in effort, not try to find new value, not try to create something new, and we will be just fine and just happy. When in reality, if other countries in Africa like Mali, Rwanda, Mozambique had the same economic value chain than we did, we would be at, I think, number like 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 on the GDP ranking for Africa. Right now we're at number 3. But I think if we were from a productivity level, I would say maybe we're number 10, maybe number 15 on the list. We're entitled. We believe everything comes to us because we think we're the great South Africa. And if I may, one last thing, Jim Collins, who has written some of the most fantastic business books to date, books like Good to Great, VE 2.0, and if you're a young entrepreneur, read those books because that will give you the most practical outlook on what it means to run a business and to take your business from something small to something amazing. Is that he got the idea of the greatness delusion, that we are great and we will always stay great, regardless of what we do. That's a myth. You don't stay great eternally. What you do makes you great, not who you are. And if you can't separate those two, that's where you're destined to fail. And I think that's where South Africa as a whole can learn from countries like Mali and Rwanda. The amount of effort that they put in, the amount of productivity that they are able to output to the amount of productivity that we output, it's two wildly different things. And if they had our economy, they would be much better well off. Far more well off than they are now.
I think of South Africa as no different from a trust fund baby who just was given everything but never really had to work for it, because we are not in this position because of competence, but rather our endowments, like the minerals that we have and just the legacy of apartheid, because as much as it was good, it was bad socially, but from an economic point of view, that's when things are working. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the reality. So I just wanted to make that point. Also, just
if I may, I want to make one more point. Let me just clarify. I don't think South Africa doesn't have skill sets though. I think that we've got some of those skilled people in the world. We did the first heart transplant, for crying out loud, and we've got engineers, bankers, that guy. We've got engineers, bankers, guys who are going to the States and really powerful economies and to work because they can. They've got the skill set. They've got the knowledge of how to learn, that impetus. But I think our downside is that when you combine that with the entitlement, that's where we don't produce what we need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that in. I thought that was important.
So it's a good point. So we are at a point now. We made 2023 first year for Stadio, and we've come such a long way from then, and I believe we've learned so much what is Francois looking forward to now? Now that you are in final year, going into, you said you're already working.
Yes, correct.
And whereas anyone else in project management, because I believe as a project manager, there's a couple of fields that you can choose.
Oh man, any field. It's actually scary.
And you are going for construction.
Correct. Yeah, construction or mining. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah. What are your expectations going into the workplace now, and what does Francois want to achieve?
Great question. Very good question. One which Francois has not thought about very well, but he will give you as good an answer as any. And if I can encourage your listeners as well, when you think about somebody asks a question about your future, you can always be fine with saying, I'm not sure. Because you aren't. Yeah. There's no way of knowing exactly what the future holds. Proverbs 27:3 is clear on that. You have no idea what's coming up. I'm sitting here. I've been to Rwanda, to Mali, to Mozambique. I'm planning on going to some other countries in the future as well, possibly Botswana, Namibia, lots of countries to go and work as a project manager. Yeah. When all I had in mind to do was either to be a teacher, a lawyer, or a pastor. Those three things. And if you continue to just do what you do best, trust in the Lord's guiding, and from that, and continue to serve Him faithfully in everything you do, and just do what you do best. That is where you find your calling. That is where you find what you do. Either you don't find what you do through tarot cards or all this other nonsense. Yeah. You find what you want to do by doing something. Yeah. But for Francois wants to take advantage of the opportunity that's open in the market in construction. Yes. Most of the people I work with are above 60 years old. Yeah. And I work in industries that regularly sees clients paying hundreds of millions of rands for houses and billions of rands for power plant projects and mines, etc. So that's a very, very money-heavy industry, and it's a very technical-heavy industry to go into, which is why I think a lot of people are shying away from it and saying, "Oh, that looks too hard for me," or "It's not interesting enough for me," etc. However, I've found that if you've been able to consolidate what you like and what you're good at, then you can be able to apply it in almost anywhere. If you're an analytical mind that thinks things through categorically and logically, you can apply it, and you want to go work in, you think, okay, banking, 100% banking, but you can use that mind in marketing. Yeah. Or if you're a creative mind, you see pictures, colors, ideas, you can take that mind and say, okay, well, architecture, that's technical, but I could do that thing. There's lots of ways. There's not just one way for you to apply what you're good at. Investigate ways of what your skill set is and how it could work in any industry. That's what project management's about. And anyway, but for Francois wants to spend the next 5 years just doing what he's been doing already, continuing to develop what I like, what my skill sets are, figuring out what those really are, so that God willing, by the time I'm 30, I will have settled into a place where, or a role or position to say, okay, I've done all of this. I'm doing this now. I'm good at it now. I've built a backbone in this career. I'm going to keep moving forward, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing now. That's the plan. And do it in an industry where young people are wanted. Young people are hungry. Those boring, monotonous industries that people think, oh no, that can't really suit me. I don't really like that idea. Generally, those industries make a lot of money. So if you want to make a decent living, try to do something that people think oh well, that sounds dead as boring. Yeah. Why would I do that? Why on earth would I do that? And if you're really not sure, another is that a big opportunity right now is for you to be electricians, plumbers, handymen, tradesmen. You will never not have a job or never not make money if you've got any one of those skill sets. You guys are gonna support the world while we try build Pan-Africa. You guys are gonna be the hands that build Pan-Africa, essentially. While the minds figure out how to unify us in diversity, you're gonna be the ones who actually do it. But that's Francois 5 years from now. He's just gonna keep doing what he's doing now and keep working, keep growing as much as he can, continue to walk in God's grace if he's faithful, and continue to just push on and just keep doing what I'm doing now.
I find the construction phase very fascinating because my first job ever actually was in construction. Oh, wow. Because my brother-in-law is in construction.
Oh, great.
At the time when he hired me, he was a project manager for this company called Halifax. I don't know if you are aware of it.
Name is about, okay.
But yeah, I had that job, my very first job, straight out of Matric, and yeah, it was very good. And just you mentioning the electricians and all that stuff, those are the people that actually make construction.
Correct.
You know, it's as much as the project managers and all these guys, you know, that come with the big ideas.
Totally.
It's the guys that actually do the work, the labor, and also the foremen and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I also know that it's a very difficult space because it's all about who's the biggest, who has the most financial muscle,
Yes.
you know, to compete for tenders. Because I know my brother-in-law right now, he's ventured into his own business right now.
Yes.
And so he's finding it difficult because he's surname, you know, that's a story for another day.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. It's difficult. So I really wish you all the best there.
Thank you.
And I want to just briefly, right, let's just talk on something slightly a bit controversial
Yes.
when it comes to black and white.
Yes.
Right. And that is, I want to choose my words carefully here, right? So I've been talking about on the platform, right? And I'm not all about this whole thing about black and white and you should, this land reform that people have been talking about.
Yes.
And what do they call it?
Land appropriation.
Land appropriation without compensation.
Correct, yes.
Right. So I've been saying, right, when are we going to get to a point where we sit down as youth? Because you had nothing to do with apartheid.
Yes.
I had nothing to do with apartheid. You were not there.
Yes.
But now it just so happens that white people have inherited,
Yes.
right, the resources and whatnot from that system.
Okay.
Unfairly, one would argue.
Okay.
Right? So I'm saying, at what point are we going to sit down, black and white, like we are doing right now, and just talk about, say, Francois, we were not there, but let's talk about this land that you acquired unfairly.
Yes.
One would argue.
All right. Yeah.
And let's try and find a way to right the wrongs.
Interesting.
You know, how would such a conversation go down?
I think first conversation would have to go down in, I would argue, always check to make sure that when you are arguing with somebody to try to restructure the land.
Yeah.
You need to start by asking the question, who owned it before I did?
Okay.
So, because we like to, I think you need to have a really solid understanding of history when you work with this kind of content, because you could just be saying, I want the land and I don't like you. You could also run into that danger. So you need to first ask the question, who really owned the land first?
Yeah.
And while I agree with you, there's a lot of argument to be made for badly taken land, for conquered land, etc. There's also another side of the argument that some land was sold, some land was given, some land was not forced over, but bought by whites in fair trade.
Yeah.
And I think you would undermine the principle of fair trade if you were just to say, to give it to me and I'm not going to give you anything back.
Yeah.
So you need to watch. I think you need to watch that first, and then you need to ask the question. You need to. I think the question. I always try to come back to competency when it comes to land reform. We're the youth. We've said we're the youth. We said the 70% of Africa's population. People who are currently owning it now are fading out. They're starting to retire. They want to take their money. They want to go elsewhere. That means that's an open door for younger people to go to those people who are older, who don't have the same ability to manage something, and to say, let me manage this for you. Let me do this for you. And in exchange, I can then start owning that land myself. I can then start looking at making a deal with this landowner to say, not to take it, but to fairly exchange it. And to say, well, I'm competent. I'm powerful. I'm capable.
Yeah.
Like, we're Africans. We're some of the most capable people on the planet. Let me go to somebody who is also competent. Yeah. In this case, land reform. Who owns land. Maybe he's a farmer. He owns land. Young black farmer comes to him and says, "You're moving the business out. Here's my proposal for the land. Here's my proposal what we could do. Here's how I understand agriculture and how it works. And if I can help you manage this land, if I can help you grow this land, then can we develop something else out of it? Can we grow it in the future?" I think it needs to start with, I would say, part of Africanization is through commerce, through fair mutual trades and exchanges, willingness to engage in trade through competency, not engaged through trading off stuff. Because if you want to really speak on an ethical level, how is it any better to say, well, you stole the land from me, you've built your life on it, you've done this X, Y, and Z, but now because I want the land back, even though if you don't know who owned it, if you're not sure if it's yours, I want the land back, so I'm going to take it back from you. Yeah. That to me is theft for theft. Not, as you said, we're no longer in apartheid. Yeah. We're in a new democracy, and the old apartheid's gone away. We need to build a new democracy of fairness together, which is what Madiba said for us to do, to aim for how can we help each other build, not how can I pull the rug from under you so I can sleep at night. I would say that's the right route to go. It's the hardest route to go, 100%. It's definitely the hardest route to go. Yeah. But I feel like if we get that route going, then we can use our resources and not distribute them, because I don't like the word distribution of resources. Yeah. I believe resources are not distributed. I believe they're earned. Yeah. You earn resources. You earn something. Not just because I want it, but because I deserve it. Yeah. I have worked for it. I have got it. That would be my take on it.
Good talk. I think that is a conversation that we need to keep alive. Agreed. Because we need to. It's causing a lot of division. And if we are so divided between black and white, and also just within white, because I believe there's also division within white people. There's also division.
Have you ever heard of the Anglo-Boer War, dude?
Absolutely.
We slaughtered each other like pigs.
Absolutely. So if we are gonna build a successful South Africa, those are the conversations that we need to start having. And lastly, what's your hope?
My hope for South Africa, first and foremost, I cannot not but say Christ. I say my hope for South Africa is that we find unity in our Creator and in our Savior, and that we come to Him, we confess our sins to Him, and that ultimately we can then find the unity that we look for through the diversity that we have, whilst maintaining the beautiful culture vibrance that Africa has in office. Africa is probably the most, if I could be so bold as to say this, is beautiful through its diversity. And while that diversity is lovely, for now, it's the thing that pulls us away from the Pan-African dream that we want, both in governance and in culture and in individuals and in tribalism. It's the thing that is pulling us apart. And we need to find a way to maintain that diversity, but also to seek out unity. And I believe the only way to do that is through Christ. Yeah. But once we have that, and once Africa repents of her sins, comes to the Savior, follows the Lord's teachings, the Lord's commandments, and builds a unified country from them, I hope that Africa will be the next superpower of the world, where the world will look to us and say, Africa, how did you do it? And the world will come to us. We will be the trade center of the world. We will be the mining center of the world. We will be the competency center of the world and the science center of the world. People will want to come to us and leave America alone. That's my hope for Africa.
Absolutely. In closing, is there anything from this conversation or just something that you are looking forward to from this conversation that you wanted to touch on that I might have probably missed?
I would love to know your perspective on Pan-Africanism. You see, I am not very well versed in Pan-African idealists, and I would love to hear your take. What would you say what would they say is the way Africa is going to become one continent? What is it through?
Yeah. It's a very difficult one, but I would say let's start by building our individual countries. Let's start in South Africa. Rwandans to build Rwanda. For Nigerians to build Nigerians. By the time we come together, right, it's like a relationship. You don't want to get into a relationship with somebody that is still healing, So let's take care of ourselves first. Okay. Because now, if we get into the relationship and we are not, how can I put it? We are not healed, and we still have our own problems as individual states. Then it's going to be a problem now when we have to take South Africa's funds and sort of like get Zimbabwe, how to put right. So Zimbabwe needs to work on itself, South Africa needs to work on itself, and then we come together. I think then we would have a much more productive conversation, because if we were to have that conversation right now, everyone is going to come, because politics is by its nature, people come with their own self-interest. It's like a balance of ideology and self-interest.
Yes.
So if we are not happy as individual states, then we are going to get in those talks with just self-interest at the heart of everything.
Right.
So I say, let's just work on our individual countries, and then we sit down. Because if we get into a relationship, the girl is happy, the man is happy, like it'll just be the chemistry and
it can work.
Because it can work, because we are fine. There's nothing we are short of. So now we can come and have a productive, constructive conversation.
Interesting.
Compared to if we are now just coming with our own problems. Because now, if I'm still dealing with the land storm thingy, I'm coming in, I'm trying to coerce these other governments that, hey, let's take this land from these white people.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So let's deal with our own problems, and then we get to the table and have our own.
Very interesting idea. May I add an idea on top, just a small idea on top of that, and I promise I'll be brief. I think one of the things that may also help Pan-Africans is for other Africans to help us solve problems they've solved that we haven't solved ourselves. So while I would agree with you that, especially in order to try to limit the political ambition behind self-development, which Africans are prone for, and all Africans are prone to do, let's make sure that we've got enough in order for us to come to the table. But I also think that one of the beautiful things of Africa is that we all solve different problems differently. And our ability to collaborate over these problems from an African perspective, which I think is on the rise now compared to the Western perspective, we're developing the African perspective now. I think that perspective will help us become a stronger nation by collaborating through countries to solve certain problems. Not all problems, I agree with you, but certain problems. Like Rwanda, we could learn a lot of sustainability from Rwanda. I've never seen cleaner streets in the world than in Rwanda. I was in Munich earlier this year. I was in Rwanda a little bit after that. Rwandan streets are cleaner than streets in Munich, Germany. They dedicate themselves to the cleanliness, to the sustainability of the country. Munich doesn't. But they have done something that European countries can't, and we can learn a lot from them. Whereas, so I think I think that we could learn a lot from other African countries too. But in agreement with you, come to the table and there's something to offer.
Yeah. Francois, thank you so much for doing this, and I'll consider you a friend of the show. So don't be shocked when we are dealing with a certain topic of conversation that we just need an additional mind to. I'll just call you or hop on a Zoom call probably.
My friend, I've been absolutely honored. Thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.
This has been the Foundry Lab. Until next time.